Dear viewers, it is not a wheel build, although it wasn't for lack of trying, but for now I am going to stick to something that at least works. For now, this is simply a regular SSF Zero build. Enjoy and let's dive in. My journey starts with deleting my main character and create a witch in SSF 0.3. I'm following my own Mobalytics build guide for leveling, link in the description. It comes with a loot filter and also I don't have to worry about anything. I get Unearth, Bombard the Miller with Bone Constructs and Chaos Bolts, buy a +1 level to Minion Scepter, equip some gear I got in the first zone, and I get Contagion and Skeletal Sniper. The Contagion Unearth combination is incredibly potent at early levels. I get minor upgrades, need to wait a bit until I can wear some pieces, and using an augment on the scepter provides extra spirit. I put multi-shot 1 on the snipers and unleash on Contagion, and the damage on Byra is very significant. This build takes off pretty much from the start, which makes it so good for leveling. I get Magnified Area 1 for Contagion, and this all helps with spreading the chaos dots. Any skill gem upgrades go into these skills too. Here is level 2 Contagion, the Rust King dies, drops a bunch of loot. I get Flame Wall to detonate the Skeletal Sniper's gas clouds. Here's that belt that I dropped before. I equip a Wise Shield, I think block is underrated the next one, throw some currency at it, get shoved by a very territorial monster, get a nice rare chest piece from the treasury at Draven's domain, get rid of Lachlan without issues, support the Flame Wall with Ignite 1 so it explodes these gas clouds faster, get a ruby ring which is awesome at this point for the resistances, kill the King in the Mist, use the spirit for another sniper, identify a +1 minion helmet, get a cold charm, support Unearth with prolonged duration, get rid of Candlemass using gas arrows, find a thawing charm which is going to come in handy real soon, and that brings me to the boss who doesn't pose much of an issue whatsoever. After a minute or so he dies. Geonor is being a good doggy because he drops a completely insane item for my build, the Unfolding Dawn with 100 spirit. That's gonna help. Here's the damage in action on the next boss. Once he burns and you rain down triple gas arrows from multi-shot 1, these fights are a walk in the park. I get movement speed boots, which I didn't have yet, clearing Abyss with this build is a breeze, and the rewards are great in SSF. I get my first amulet, Balbala goes down, I buy another +1 level to Minion Scepter and slam all the currency I have on it. Here's my first Lesser Jeweler's Orb, which I put on the snipers as that is my main damage, and I give them bidding 1, increasing their command damage, so the gas clouds. I get 15% movement speed boots, add a regal, it's not great, and here is my first and one of the few deaths in the campaign. I give my snipers multi-shot 2, get some sockets in my gear and fill them with lightning res, do the first trial and ascend to an infernalist, taking the hellhound and upgrading a bunch of skill gems to level 8, and I get vulnerability 2. The boss of Act 2 is long, but I do decent damage already and make no mistakes this time, meaning it is time for Act 3. In Act 3, I want to show I am not a pro gamer because I do not die to the monkey. I get another jeweler, which I put on Raging Spirits. I've been using Flame Wall to buff projectile damage for clearing and to summon these Raging Spirits, as you can see over here. Single target damage is still the same, however, just using the command ability of the snipers. I get a +1 minion helmet, and then it is time for Viper Nazi, and yeah, I went from 1 death up until this point to a handful. Sometimes this boss is just a mess. I do the second trial, craft myself a little +2 minion scepter while doing that, and I get minion damage on there too. I put a regal and some Abyss currency on it, get the spirit craft from Abyss, slam it twice, get even more spirit, and this is an amazing scepter for Act 3. Once I'm back to the trial using my new toy, the boss dies almost instantly. This feels like having a good time, and I take Altered Flesh as a reward. Doriani isn't much of a challenge either with this newfound damage. I'm still quite squishy, not rescapped, not a whole lot of health, but as long as I avoid his attacks, which I know quite well at this point, I'm completely fine. He goes down without issues, meaning it's time for Act 4. But not before I decide to use some lesser essences on my gear like Jonathan intended. In Act 4, the boss killing mayhem continues. This one gives +2 passives. I'm not doing a weapon swap skill tree really, I don't feel it's required for leveling, or really ever with this build. I put rapid casting 2 on Flame Wall, I get my first Greater Jeweler's Orb, which I decided to save for now. I get Mana Flask recovery, I meet my first rogue who drops all of her jewelry, and my first Omniphobia dropping emotions, which I have yet to use. And my first Abyssal Depths, probably one of my favorite parts of this patch. It is deep and deadly down there, but the rewards are very good in Solo Self-Found. I get a bunch of tattoos which I convert to resistances. I don't think it matters all that much, but I personally like resistances over attributes. I get another Greater Jewelers from an Abyss chest, and then it's already time for Tavakai. I talked about this in the previous video, but I still enjoy this fight a lot. I've done it a bunch of times with many different builds at this point, and this build at this point is quite strong with the same gas arrow explosions. But I am having fun, and that's the most important part, isn't it? It's time for some buffed up bugs, it is time for the interludes. As soon as I have access to the interludes, I make my way to the Ashen Forest, because there is one specific enemy here called the Frozen Mandibles, also known as the Cocaine Ant. This enemy as a spectre is popularized by Gazi TV, credits to him and whoever who discovered this. It's always hard to tell from watching a Gazi video if the builds hold up in SSF and how viable they are, because he almost always plays trade and he has usually pretty crazy gear. But then I saw Rex making this work in hardcore Solo Self-Found, which convinced me. And damn, these ants are something else. They cost 99 spirit, which is a lot, but you can reduce that. With 330 spirit I can summon 3 of them plus a Storm Mage. I put that Greater Jeweler's Orb of before on there, support the Cocaine Ants with Feeding Frenzy 2, Muster, Rapid Attacks 2 and Impact Shockwave, which does AoE damage when they heavy stun, which they do because they do so much damage. I get rid of Flame Wall as I no longer need to summon Raging Spirits or buff Sniper Arrows, get a Cleric in the mix, I put Bone Offering on right click, Unearth on left click, just for a bunch of extra minions, and this is basically the build. On the one hand, you can say it's overpowered, sure, it's nothing compared to a Deadeye though. And on the other hand, you could argue that this is what a summoner should be played like, and I subscribe to the latter personally. I feel there should be some classes that play like this, or like Righteous Fire, where you just walk around, optionally buff shit and clear the map. It's not the fastest or the strongest, but it is decent, it's very fun to experience for the first time, and it makes you want to expand your army and get more Cocaine Ants. And most importantly, it makes you keep playing and not get annoyed by how hard the game is when playing a non-meta build or god forbid a wheel build. Because I definitely was a little annoyed these last 2 weeks. However, nothing a little bit of cocaine can't fix, as we all know, and these cracked ants are pure bliss, as far as I'm concerned. I can strongly recommend these. Single target, as you can see over here, that's pretty nice as well. I drop a +3 Rattling Scepter, which is great because the skeletons are permanent minions and buff the Muster support gem. I 4-link the Cleric, increase its level, and go for some passive 3 defensive nodes, such as Energy Shield. I get enough spirits to get 4 ants, plus a Cleric. Here is that +3 Scepter, which is starting to look pretty juicy with this Abysscraft. I drop an Amazing Amulet, 45 spirit, plus other decent stats, which means a bigger army, and I kill this pretty annoying boss without any issues. I 4-link Pain Offering and increase its duration, 4-link Vulnerability 2, the boss of the second interlude bites the dust, and I didn't even record anything else from the interludes. Which brings me to maps.
Cataclysmic event is over, but corruption is still radiating from certain locations.
Mapping is smooth, as you would expect with a meta build. I'm not following a specific guide or anything, I just looked at some common support gems, and then the passive tree for summoners is rather straightforward. This is a tier 1 map, I think, level 65. I drop a level 15 skill gem and upgrade the specters. I replace the base of operations to my hideout. I slam together a pretty decent belt right there. Use my lesser abyss currency on the gear that I have, as you can't use it on higher item level gear. Visit the Wells of Souls and I take some rarity. The double slam does nothing, but it is still an okay ring. I decide I deserve some MTX for my efforts after the campaign, and I go for the Flying Elder look. I take 2 cats as a homage to the tourist, Rutu, who is definitely not a cat. I keep going into depths, which I really love for some reason. I drop another Greater Jeweler's Orb, which I put on Pain Offering, and I get cooldown recovery. This shield here is a massive upgrade. The slams improve it a bit. I add a socket, 20% quality. Valid, because I can, doesn't seem to do all that much. And I put an 11% Chaos Res rune in there. I slot some other socketables. Here are the resistances at this point. I'm still not capped, but I'm getting there. I get a good chest from Ritual, which I like a lot less in Path of Exile 2 compared to PoE 1 for some reason. I reach level 70, get some new gloves which aren't great but do have a socket, so I get some more resistances. I get Culling Strike on the unearthed minions and the spell itself. I start using greater currency on white gear like these gloves, rarity and flat ES, that's a decent base. I put a defensive essence with energy shield on there, but botch all the other slams so I don't end up using it as I need some resistances. This is a fresh SSF run, so I still need to gather all of the Atlas points, and at the start I like local knowledge. I find even more Greater Jeweler's Orbs. I have pretty much got 5 links across the board at this point. I'm still at tier 1 maps and these movement speed reductions are completely mental. I decide to support the ants with Infernal Legion 3, which slowly kills them, burns them down, but also it burns everyone around them. It's good for clear. I saw Rex do this, so kudos to him. Here you see that in action, somewhat, and I drop my first rune. It's completely pointless, but still. The boss dies fast, which is what you like to see in a tier 2 map, let's be honest. I drop a great base for boots, equip new gloves I get from a ritual, socket them and get fire res, meaning that I'm now capped. I decide to desecrate a few maps, which could be fun. I collect 2 books for more passive points, and I decide to turn the unearthed into more of utility, using blind 2 support. In my third trial, I loot a decent sapphire. Minion resistances come in handy to keep them from burning too much and dying all the time as a result of Infernal Legion 3. Here is the boss of the third trial that is pretty smooth, how it should be, because trials are absolutely terrible. I take, of course, Baidad's Will, converting life into spirit. I now decide to take that chest piece that I found way back and finally replace the one from the campaign with 100 spirit for something much better. I add 2 sockets, fix my resistances, run the Fractured Lake, which gives a surprisingly decent amulet that I stash for now, but who knows later. I take Despair instead of Vulnerability as the ants break armor quickly and also do 10% physical as chaos damage. Unearthed becomes even more utility using Maim support. I get my first perfect Jeweler's Orb, which of course goes onto the ants, and I didn't record it, but I'm pretty sure I put heft support in there. As I take on higher tier maps, I drop higher tier level skill gems and I prioritize the ants once more. At this point I'm running tier 6 maps, doing these abyss maps as well. It's fun, bad for performance, even on GeForce Now, which you're watching, but it is worth it. I drop my first special support as well. I drop another Greater Jeweler's Orb, put it on Despair and support it with rapid casting too. I found a decent boot base which I crafted up to this. I upgrade the Mandible skill gem once more, drop a Divine and a Greater Jeweler's Orb, have a near-death experience, a Researcher Strongbox drops a Ventor's Gamble which I can equip without struggling too much with resistances. It's great for extra spirit and that means I can now have 5 cocaine ants. A little later I drop a perfect Jeweler's Orb again, kill a rogue and decide to put this one on Unearthed so I can link rapid casting 2 once more. I get blown up, my defenses aren't great, although I am res capped. The Black Crow bugs out and refuses to open the door, reloading the map doesn't fix that issue and restarting the game doesn't either. He is simply stuck. I upgrade the ants to level 18, desecrate some maps and I try an abyss map. I do a lot of crafting on white gear and this time I get lucky. This is a great amulet, so I use an essence on there, create a desecrated suffix, slam on life and evasion and then it is time to unveil. Cold and chaos res is pretty decent as I am not chaos res capped. I was hoping for a plus level to minions, but I will settle for this. Finally, I use some resistance runes to fix fire res and I'm all set. This is a good upgrade. I get a new unique staunching charm from the Seer. I do my first Xashed run, providing a lot of catalysts, and after killing the boss himself, I receive Xop's blood. I use an Omen of Chaotic Rarity to fix some map mods using Chaos Orbs. I find Uruk's Smelting and try it out for a bit, but decide against it ultimately, as I don't break armor multiple times, usually. I find the Fall of the Axe charm in a ritual for 10k tribute. I create some new boots using this as a base, using an essence that provides increased energy shield, a desecrated mod which completely bricks, but okay, and then some slams, quality and a socket. The end result isn't great, but it is a lot more energy shield than I had before. I decide to replace Heft with Heavy Swing, I think it is more damage. I upgrade the Ants to level 19, I drop a decent Amethyst ring which after 2 slams is very usable, and Socketables fix my resistances once more. While I'm at it, I also decide to put a Bear Talisman in my Scepter for flat physical damage to minions. I am making my way through endgame maps and change my MTX again. The floating around was nice, but I couldn't really see when I was dodging, so it's back to something more basic. I anoint Mass Rejuvenation, health regen for myself and minions. It's one of the better anoints available to me at the moment. Another Seer provides the Grand Project. I do love that tablet. Wonder what will happen to that in 0.3.1. I reach level 90, put Minion Mastery on the Hellhound, which gets 6 links at level 90. Summon a monkey from Runestones who almost one-taps me. I still die quite often as my effective hit pool isn't great. Put 20% quality on Unearth and drop into Abysses when I can. I only encounter Tazgul, it seems, not sure why, but it's easy enough and I get an invitation. It's time to have some fun with the new Pinnacle boss, therefore. I empower the ring 3 times in total and then I summon a final boss. I do die a few times as the fight is new to me and visual clarity is a serious issue already, but after a few tries he goes down and gives good loot. It's a well-rolled Darkness Enthroned, but for boots. That's good for movement speed, but I want a helm for reservation efficiency nodes. I attempt more crafts, forcing a prefix desecrated modifier on these boots, hoping to hit movement speed, which I don't. I craft a new helm, also using desecrated modifiers, and it already has +1 minion skills, plus this pretty good roll. I test out a simulacrum with this build, which also is quite smooth. This is just tier 1, but still, I definitely miss some rarity on my gear, so this wasn't all that great, but it is nice to do some new content anyway. The Gamble Strongbox provides this rune, which is apparently good as it is a tink, and here is what I get for 1.8 million gold. Nice. I hit another +3 minion scepter, check Craft of Exile what I can roll on that with desecrated mods, slam it with the Greater Essence of Command and then with a desecrate and it rolls life, which is okay, but it's not what I want. After 2 slams it's just not better than what I have, so I start gambling with Chaos Orbs and ultimately remove the +3. That's how it goes sometimes. Here's the next piece, a chest, and this one is a lot better. Flat energy shield from the desecrate and it already has spirit on it. A Greater Exalt gets me Cold Res, which is useful. I quality it, socket it twice and decide to corrupt it and get lucky as a useless mod is turned into Chaos Res. This is a very decent chest for solo self-found. I lack intelligence now, what else is new, but nothing some runes can't fix. This brings me up to 5.7k energy shield, still not massive, but a lot more than what I started with. Another Seer, another Chance, but the loot sucks. These gloves are fun though. I get another Perfect Jeweler, but I have no need for these anymore. This is a pretty cool support gem, but not for me, as I don't command my army. Here is a level 20 skill gem, which I put on the mandibles, if I would have the intelligence, that is. Again, greater runes of resolve actually resolve something in this case, bringing my cocaine ants up to a level of, I think, 24. I summon another monkey by accident. I don't know why I keep getting this dude and he hits me, but apparently not hard enough. And again, there's a Perfect Jeweler. I guess I will save them for another build if I ever get there. I made another shield with, of course, a Desecrate mod. This time it is hybrid resistances. It is quite a nice piece in the end. This is capping my Chaos Res. I felt I wasn't getting enough currency to keep juicing endgame maps. I was literally running out. So I specced into strong boxes and specialized into researchers boxes. And I feel it really helps. And I do another craft. It's boots again with the Desecrated prefix. I hit the movement speed. It is only 25%, but I feel for this build that is completely fine. And I do some gloves with rarity, resists, plenty of energy shield, some unfortunate slams, but at least the desecrated mod turns into something useful. Energy shield recharge rate is quite nice. I finished the piece with some cold res, bringing my total energy shield to 6.3k. Here's the character in a tier 14 or tier 15 map. As you can see the mods, it's pretty juicy. I don't have a 4th ascendancy as I hate that shit with a passion, but I could have a lot more energy shield if I would do that 4th ascendancy. I don't care though, I'm playing for fun. I will wait for the Trial of the Ancestors to do that. I am level 93, it is a solid character, a fun playstyle. I'm pretty happy with this. I'm aware that after my initial Zero to Hero run about 3 weeks ago almost, I didn't post for a while. This build isn't completely done yet in any way, but I also feel it doesn't warrant 2 episodes. I'm still struggling a bit with how to structure the content for Path of Exile 2, as I find it significantly harder to play wheel builds, and the gap between PoE 1 and 2 in that regard is huge. I'm working on a video about that topic, just sharing my thoughts a bit on that, because I think it is quite interesting, especially from an SSF perspective, and especially, from the way that I like to play these games. I've been playing the game pretty much non-stop, but a lot of builds and attempts to wheel something have failed, and thus there were no videos. This build, while not original, did allow me to enjoy the game without suffering and frustration, and as I am currently very occupied with work where I also have to tackle complex issues pretty much all day long, I just wanted to play a build that worked, which is what you see over here. It's nothing crazy, you can scale this much further, but it is fun to play, at least I think so. I'm having fun to play, and hopefully you had fun watching this video. If you did, please subscribe, it helps. Like the video, that would be cool. And sorry for not posting for a few weeks, that's completely up to me. And that leaves me with thanking you for making it to the end. Love you all, see you soon, bye bye.